Hello and welcome to episode number 20 of the Hafey Digital Podcast, a show for creators, makers, and doers, where my goal is to help you make to the max. My name is Ryan Hafey, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about organizational tips and tricks for video creators. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Not drinking bubbly today. Just like last week, sipping on a little bit of red wine. Because why not? We're all in quarantine. Just here to have a good time. Might as well enjoy ourselves. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for hanging out. Like I said, we're going to be talking about some organizational tips and tricks. Not really tricks, just tips, really. Just things that I've come across as I've kind of grown in my video creator role. Any video creators out there know that if you've been doing it for long enough, if you don't have some kind of organizational structure, it just makes your life that much more difficult. You want to talk about workflow. You want to talk about being able to edit faster and create content faster. Being organized is definitely one way to make sure that you can get things done a little bit faster. But by the way, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter. Let's have a conversation and talk about all things photo, video, gear. I like talking about all this stuff. So let's talk about it. So before we get into the topic at hand, of course, we got to talk about some updates. And I've got a couple updates today. First off, I have started filming some of my new videos. I've actually filming 2 videos at once, for 2-3 weeks now since we've been in quarantine, maybe even longer. I haven't filmed anything, and then now I'm in the midst of filming 2 projects at the same time. One of them is the third video in the podcast series that I'm putting together. So the first one being kind of just a tour of the podcast studio that I have. The second one being focused on gear and setting up the gear, what kind of cameras you need, capture cards, all that kind of stuff. This third video is going to be on software and what software programs you're going to need and all the settings that go into them. Spoiler alert, it's majority focused on OBS, aka Open Broadcaster Software. But I dive deep and kind of go through all the different settings that I use in OBS to be able to do what I'm doing now and get a nice high quality stream out to the interwebs on YouTube. So that was filmed actually earlier today. So the goal, depending on how this week goes, is to have it ready by the end of the week, maybe by next Monday, not tomorrow, but that's the plan. So hopefully we can do that. The other one is a drone hyperlapse video that I've talked about before. This one depends on the weather before I can move on kind of to the next part of it. So right now what I'm trying to film, spoiler alert, there's not a lot of viewers and listeners to this podcast yet. So I feel I can reveal some details and some behind the scenes stuff that you won't know about if you don't listen. So what I'm trying to do is film 5 different of the same clip using my Mavic 2 Pro and film those clips through at different points of the day and then be able to put them all together to make kind of a day to night moving drone hyperlapse. And I'm doing that using waypoints in DJI. I have no idea if it works. I've never tried it before, but I've had this concept in my head for a while. So I'm going to see if it works, and if it does, fantastic. And that'll make for good content. And if it doesn't work, well, then I guess I've just documented my failure. But either way, I'll make a video about it. But it relies on the weather being good and there being no clouds in the sky. That's kind of a prerequisite in order for me to film these. I've gotten 3 of the 5 shots that I need. And I'm waiting on the sky to be nice and clear for the other 2 before I can then move on to kind of filming obviously the editing portion. I need the footage before I can film or edit everything together. So I'm working on that now. And, I live in Vegas, so hopefully it shouldn't be too hard for the blue sky to appear long enough for me to do these, but you never know. We'll see how it goes. So that's update number 1. Update number 2 is you may notice that things look a little bit different on the desk here. And that is because I have moved some things around. I've done some reorganization to the desk that I've been meaning to do for quite a while, actually. But I just was too lazy to do it, I guess. And it's still not done. I'm not fully 100%. See, I'm already looking around and seeing things that are messed up that shouldn't be where they are. But a couple changes I made. Number one, you'll notice that the PC tower is not back here against the wall. I have moved my PC tower over to the floor just on the other side of this camera, up against the side of the desk. And I did that primarily, I did that for two reasons. Number one, I just wanted to be able to reallocate some of this desk space and kind of declutter it a little bit, or at least make it a little bit more flexible at a certain, and as you can see too, I moved here, we'll go to this view. I moved this audio board, my Rodecaster Pro off to the side. I don't really like it there. I mean, I think it took up a lot of space when it was sitting right in front of me, but when it's back here, obviously I gotta reach to be able to get to it, which isn't a huge deal. Preferably, I would like to have my Rodecaster Pro and my Ada Mini switcher and basically everything that I use right here in front of me, just so that I don't have to be turning around. When I'm hosting the podcast, I can just handle everything right here and do it as I'm looking into the camera. But, this office space is relatively small, and it doubles as a workout room. If this was just an office, this room, it'd be great. It'd be perfect for what I need. But we had to use them for both. So I only have so much space that I can work with. And that means that I have to make a few sacrifices, which is cool. But hopefully at some point I can find a way to switch things around. But yeah, I got rid of the PC, moved it over there. I also took some external hard drives that I had and used some Velcro and put them up against the side of the desk over there so that they weren't taking up desk space, along with a little, it's like a USB hub. It's got an SD card reader, CF card reader, mini SD or micro SD card reader. And that's kind of like on the side. I don't really like the headphone setup here, how it just kind of dangles across the desk, but I'm getting used to it. It's not horrible. And then I've still got my AM switcher and my Elgato Stream Deck in the same place here. What I would like to do eventually, two things. One, I'll go back to this angle here. So you can see my light right there. Now it's very, very close to me, that part of it's fine, but what makes it difficult is that it's so close to this monitor and to the desk. And the reason that causes issues is that I can't move it back any farther. You can't really see it. You can kind of see it. There's a bar that I installed on the corner of my desk. Just went to Home Depot and got one of those metal bars that are, like 4 feet long, that's threaded on each end. And the little end plate, and screwed it in so that it just sticks straight up out of the desk. And then I have a friction arm, which is holding up this video light. But it's as far away as I can get it without hooking it up to something else. So what I'd like to do is do kind of a similar setup where but make a little mounting system that hangs down from the ceiling, and then be able to mount the light from that. And then that will allow me to move the light back a little bit more, give me a little bit more space. But also what I want to do is, as you can see, I've got the second monitor here. This is a 1080 monitor. It's okay, it gets the job done, of course. What I'd like to do, though, is get a second 4K monitor and then flip it vertically. Because I think, just especially with editing, I think a vertical monitor, being able to go down, look through all of your files and everything, is going to be a lot easier than using a lower resolution wide screen like that. And so I want to get a different monitor, do it straight up and down, and then I'd like to get one of those monitor stands that goes on the back of the desk that has articulating arms, so I can kind of move things around if I need to. But before that can happen, because of how tight everything is over here, I'd have to figure out a solution for this light to get it moved back a little bit. So, yeah. Anywho, yeah. But right now everything's less cluttered, which I like. I tried to get used to having the keyboard down in this little drawer here, I just couldn't get used to it. It was annoying. If I wanted to, wake up my computer, I had to open it up every time. And again, first world problems, but it was just kind of obnoxious to have to do that every time. So at least with this setup, I can get the keyboard back on the desk. It's easily accessible, and that works for me. So yeah, that's the update. And with that, let's move into the topic at hand, which is organizational tips for video creators specifically. And I'm not talking about, how to organize your gear, although that could be a topic for another video. And quite honestly, I don't know if I'm all too prepared for that topic yet, because I still have some, like right now, again, because this space is used as a workout room and an office, storage space is limited. So I would love to have just a big cabinet in here, or a dedicated space where I can put all of my gear and just access it from one place. But I can't do that. All four drawers that are on this desk that I have here have stuff in them. I've got a bunch of like light stands and soft boxes and things like that under my bed upstairs. I've got stuff in my closet. So I got stuff spread out over the place. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But what I want to talk more specifically about is really how to organize your files and organize your projects within Premiere, or really within whatever editing software you happen to use. And I thought a good place to start would be talking about how I use, or where I store things, meaning physical hard drives, or cloud storage. So for me, I have Google Drive. I guess it would be considered G Suite. I don't know, Google Drive through G Suite, whatever the business version of it is. And for me, it's $10 a month. And that, I don't know if it's $10 per user per month, but I know that for me, I only pay $10 a month, and really it's only me anyway. And that gives me unlimited storage. I believe in the beginning it was 10 terabytes maximum storage that you got for that. And then at some point they switched it around, and now you get unlimited storage, which is great. Because now I don't have to stop and think about, how much footage and how many files and stuff like that I'm backing up. Brendan says that's what it's called. Okay, perfect. So I use Google Drive, and I use it a couple different ways. I use it to host, all of my like bookkeeping business stuff, like all my spreadsheets and things like that. I keep there. I have different folders for client work, different folders for business documents and things like that. And then within all of my client folders, all the deliverables, any invoices, any contracts are in separate folders within each client folder. And then all the footage and all the assets that I collect as well, individual raw images, raw video, is also backed up into those folders. But I also have I believe it's an 8 terabyte hard drive, and it's not a fast drive. It's not intended to be. It's intended to be a backup drive. But as I mentioned earlier, I stuck some Velcro on the two hard drives I had on my desk, one of those being that 8 terabyte drive, and now it's over on the side there. But that one I've set up as kind of like the automatic backup drive for Google Drive. So anything that's on that drive is automatically backed up to Google Drive, and then it just stays there, which is great for me. That drive's actually getting pretty full, so at a certain point I'm going to have to replace it or get a new one. But it's super helpful just to be able, if you're on your computer, and it's not that expensive. That drive that I got, and I think it's around the same price still. Maybe I'll throw a link in the description, but it's $150. You get 8 terabytes. You're not going to be able to edit anything off of it, but if you just need a drive that's big and can back up a lot of your files, it's worked out really well. So everything that's on there gets backed up into Google Drive, so I kind of have it duplicated, physical copy and then a copy in the cloud in case I need anything. And what I will do is, if I'm finished with a vlog or, just a Hafey Digital project or a client project, just grab the kind of the main folder for all those files, drag it over into the designated folder on that on that backup drive. And then, while I'm sleeping, it's getting backed up to Google Drive. It could take a while depending on the size of the files, but it gets backed up. So then you don't have to worry about losing those files. So that's a good habit to get into if you're just kind of starting to figure out your organizational structure, is just to get used to backing up your files as constantly as possible. So, and then outside of that, I have the other hard drive that I have over there, I typically use for just photography. I would put specifically almost exclusively client photography. I would put all the raw files on there and edit off of it. It is a physical hard drive. It's not a solid state drive, which I'll get into in a little bit. But it's 7,200 RPM. It's fast enough to at least be able to edit some raw images and things like that. So it works. Just looked it up. G Suite business level for the unlimited storage was $12 a month. That might be right. I think I said 10. Maybe it used to be 10, but $12 sounds right. So that Brendan's saying G Suite's $12 a month, unlimited storage. So there you go. So yeah, that's that other drive, and then I have basically two solid state drives, SSD drives. For any of you out there who are watching and not familiar with the difference between hard drives and solid state drives, hard drives in this day and age are typically much slower. SSD drives have much faster read and write speeds. So typically speaking, when I'm editing a project, I'm editing off an external SSD drive. And that works great as long as I've got a fast USB. It's not going to work in a USB 2.0 slot, for example, because you're just going to, even though you can read and write fast on the drive, your USB 2.0 speeds are going to throttle you. So you just want to make sure that you have fast enough ports, USB ports. So I have two solid state drives. One of them is client specific, and that is where I think it's either 500 gigabyte or a terabyte. Typically, I'm not working on too many client projects at once, or at least the projects that I'm working on typically don't have tons and tons of footage that's going to take up so much space where I would need, in most cases, more than 500 gigabytes. Yeah, so I'll put all the my client projects on one drive, and then on the other SSD drive that I have, that's where I have all of just my vlog projects, Hafey Digital Podcast files, just any projects, any video or photo projects that I'm working on, like for personally, just for myself. And even that stuff gets backed up into Google Drive as well. So, that's my hard drive situation. I very rarely edit or store anything on my computer's physical drive. I have an internal 4 terabyte drive, I believe, in my PC, and then the SSD drive where all the like operating system files and everything like that. I think that's a 500 gigabyte SSD, and I try to keep those as clean as possible. I don't want to fill those up and start bogging down my system. I will say, though, that, for example, like right now, I'm recording this podcast along with the fact that I'm, along with streaming it. And when I record the podcast, I do record directly onto the PC solid state drive. I guess I could technically record to an external drive, but doing it directly on the computer, I don't have to worry about any issues with transfer rates or anything like that. And I know that the computer is going to be able to keep up with that. So, there's storage. So and then as far as files and file organization, when I start, and I'm just going to open up a new Finder window here, and we're going to make a new folder. Hold on. Folder. Open a new window. Okay, let's bring this over here. We're going to turn on the screen. So when I start a new project, if I'm going to, I just finished filming, I need to start getting all of this footage onto, backed up onto my hard drive, whichever one I choose, I'm going to create a series of folders. And typically the first will be A7 III, or basically one folder for every camera that I'm using. So I might do A7 III, A6500. I might create a folder. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I might create a folder for, let's say, screen capture. So if I'm doing a tutorial, I might, save, do some screen recordings, and I'll put those in there. I might do another one for OBS recordings, because sometimes, like for example, the podcast video that I was recording earlier today made it easy because I could just record right onto the computer. So I will have an OBS recordings folder as well. Next, I will do, I might do like an images folder if I know that there's going to be, and some of these I'll add as I go depending on how things work out and the different things that go into the project. But I might have an images folder. I might have a miscellaneous video folder. Let's say if I'm pulling an old video that I've done before, or if I'm grabbing an old YouTube video or something like that, that's going to be used kind of sporadically throughout the project, I might put that in there. And then there might be another video or another folder for, and again, these are going to vary. I may have more than this at times. I may have less than this. Put one for effects. If there are any sort of video effects, like in some videos before I've used like a little screen glitch to transition between things. In that case, I'll just pop that in the effects effects folder, and just kind of combine assets that are similar to that, put them in there. Then I will do typically, there might be a separate audio folder. If I'm recording separate audio from, outside other than what's recorded into camera, I will have a separate audio folder for that. And then I will do a project files folder, and that's where all of my, whether it's Premiere, whether it's After Effects, or both, basically any project related files are going to go in there. So I know that if I'm going to open up a project and work on it again, I know that to go right into the project files folder, and then the project file will be in there, and I can just double click on that and get going. And then the last folder that I will create typically will be exports, and that, as it sounds, will just be any exports when the final video, maybe short little clips that I'm going to piece out for social media. All of those exports from Premiere or After Effects or whatever will go into that folder, and that is how I stay organized. Then, now I didn't use, let's see, maybe I can, no, I don't want to do that. We'll just talk about it. So I'm going to delete that because I don't need it anymore, that folder. So that's kind of my organizational structure as far as keeping files and everything like that going. Let me bring it. Nope, no, wrong buttons. There we go. Now I'm back. Okay. So, and then the other, lost my train of thought here. Good excuse to stop and take a sip of wine. By the way, it's getting hot here. It's 78 degrees in Las Vegas currently, and that's at 6:30 p.m. I've seen when like Chicago, I think Brendan, didn't you, if you're still on, didn't you post like a clip where it was snowing or something near you? It's crazy. I mean, I guess it's only April and it's still cold in some places. But yeah, in Vegas, I mean, it's topped 80 degrees already. Anyway, naming conventions. File naming conventions. Now, I will say that there are a lot of times I typically keep naming conventions for files for like my exports, but it depends. Sometimes, if I need to kind of, like for this drone hyperlapse video I'm doing, I'm naming all the different files that I'm capturing, because, for example, the shots that I'm having to do periodically throughout the day, there might be a sunrise shot, there might be a midday shot, there might be a sunset shot, there might be a afternoon shot. And if I just captured all those and then threw them into a folder, then I'd have to click through them and find out which ones. Oftentimes when I film videos, I will edit them kind of chronologically so I know that, all right, I finished with this one, time to go on to the next one, So I don't necessarily need to rename them. But I know, like, for example, with the Sony a7 III, if I film some clips, if I back up those clips and then I format the camera, the SD card, then it's going to go back to C0001 or whatever it is. So now I'm going to have duplicate files, so then I have to rename them. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, it was from yesterday. Yeah, it's crazy. So, there are cases when I'll just take the clips off of the camera, throw them into, say, an A7 III folder, and just leave them there. And because I know that I'm just going to go through them chronologically. Other times I will name them individually. But the naming convention that I almost always use is going to be first the date, and I start with the year. So, today is the 19th, it'll be 2020-04-19. And then I'll do an underscore, and then I'll put whatever so again, going back to the drone hyperlapse. Actually, I think I might have that. I do. I'm going to open this folder here. Let's come back to the screen. There we go. And I know that this is probably pretty small, but you'll get the idea. So, drone hyperlapse. So these are the folders that I have in there currently. iPhone, took a little bit of some iPhone screen recordings there. A7 III. So you can look in here, and let me change how this is. Go here. So, okay, so I just contradicted myself because these I did a little bit differently. And again, it's mostly the naming convention with the date that I use is typically more for exports. But in this case, I guess because these aren't as time sensitive, I didn't include a date. But A7 III dash, sunset drone shot _1. Sunset drone shot _2. And then if you go into the Mavic 2 Pro folder, you can see that I did kind of the same thing here. Mavic dash hyperlapse afternoon shot.mov. Let's go back to a project. This is kind of one that I've been working on periodically. I've put it behind for a little bit, but if I go into exports here, now you can kind of see a little bit what I'm talking about. And the names for these are actually a lot more simple because I was doing these day by day, so I didn't really need to contextualize them anymore, I guess. But yeah, 2020 03/22. So March 22nd of 2020 was that video. 1 second, blah 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 blah. So and even my folders. So individual project folders, that's where that sort of naming convention comes into play. Now, if it's like a project that's not a single day project, I will typically give it a date that corresponds to a month. So drone hyperlapse, I'm hoping I can get that done this month. And the name of that folder is 2020-04-drone hyperlapse. So I know I can look at that and say, okay, I started that project in April of 2020. And then as far as, like, for example, my Premiere, like organizing files and folders inside Premiere, actually everything is very similar to how I organize my folders with all my files in them. The only exceptions, I would say, is I would include a sequences folder, a sequences bin in Premiere. I'm trying to think what else. I might have like a bin for extras in which I'll put like adjustment layers and color mats or black videos or anything like that. I might, depending on if I use a lot of them, I might do a separate bin for specifically for nests. There are some videos where I'll have a number of those. But other than that, the file structure looks the same, and I think that's kind of important because if you're using one file structure one way or somewhere, and then you're going to completely change it up elsewhere, then I think you're just creating more work for yourself. So what I'm really getting at with all this, I guess, is that there's really no right answer, and my organizational structure. I've said that so many times in this podcast, and I apologize. But the way that I organize things is not necessarily going to work for everyone. But what I will say is that getting organized was one of the things that took me to the next level. Because again, as I kind of alluded to earlier, if you use Premiere at all, especially if you use it for multiple projects at a time, if you're the kind of person that just takes all your files and lumps them into a folder somewhere on your desktop or whatever, and then you open Premiere and then you come back to that project later, or you start a new project, you'll know that it's a nightmare sometimes. If you move files around, Premiere loses them and you got to locate them, and it's a pain in the ass. So if at all possible, if you haven't done it yet, I highly recommend that you sit down and really just start to kind of put all your files together. If time management is important to you, take the time to just organize your life. Get your shit together, as they say, because it'll help you. Brendan, what else is up? Because I think that's all I got on the topic of organization. See, the last episode was closer to an hour, and this time I've gone over 30 minutes already, and I feel like I breezed through that. Didn't even feel like I went that long. Anyway, oh, by the way, I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier. Going back to the workspace thing, the other reason I moved the PC over on this side of the desk was it made so much, like, when I'm recording and streaming at the same time doing this podcast, that fan on that PC, while it's relatively quiet, it's still running constantly. And this Rodecaster Pro has a noise gate filter on it that will kind of get rid of some of that background noise. But the more background noise there is, the more noticeable it is. So I'm hoping that you can kind of hear the difference now. I'm hoping that that compressor or that noise gate doesn't kick in quite as hard, and that the audio sounds a little bit better. Brendan Halbum, this is a great topic. I was actually just thinking of making a video about this. You absolutely should do it. Because, yeah, it's one of those things that I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to talk about this. And actually, I had this on my list for quite a while of just possible podcast topics. And, I just kind of kept putting it off because I didn't really think it was that important or that interesting. And then I sort of thought back to myself when I first started out. And I thought, how lost I was. Again, mentioning Premiere again with just how easy it is to lose files or make it hard to find files and the things you need. So hopefully just kind of giving people, even if just a little glimpse into how I keep myself organized, that will help others out as well. But with that, it's been a long day. I've spent a lot of time in this studio recording tutorials and now the podcast. And I've got a puppy out there who's probably currently driving the family crazy, or if not, he will be soon. So I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my Sunday, as you all should do as well. I hope that everyone continues to stay safe and healthy. And despite all the craziness that's going on out there and all the conspiracies and all the nonsense, you know what? Just stay home as much as possible. Just keep your distance from people. Like, it's really not that hard to ask. Sorry, I've been kind of going back and forth with some people who are saying a lot of nonsense that I think is not helping the situation at all. So my take is just do whatever we need to do to minimize things. Let's flatten that curve. Let's keep the casualties and the cases down, and let's slowly ease back into life. Let's not just jump into it. I know everybody wants to get the economy up and running, but let's just ease into it. We don't gotta jump right into it. We're doing so good. Let's not lose our heads now. Let's not lose more lives. Let's just do what we do. Oh, real quick, Brendan Halbum. I use G Technology 4 terabyte hard drives for storing files long term, 2 1 terabyte SSD drives for current projects, and my new MacBook Pro 8 terabyte. You got an 8 terabyte SSD in your Mac Pro? Man, nice. But yeah, that's pretty similar to That's kind of what I have. It's a very similar setup. So that's cool. Very nice. Thanks for the input. All right, guys. I'm going to call this one quits. Thanks again so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next one.